Okay, I do believe we are live right now. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Break the Rules After Hours live stream. I am your host, Lev Polyakov. With me is Giovanni Pennacchietti wearing a very fashionable hat that, listen, if you are watching this on YouTube, you are not going to get a chance to see this hat. It is going to be hidden from you forever. So go and watch the YouTube link. You are going to see the YouTube link on my Twitter, as well as the Patreon link. So become a patron, patreon.com/break the rules. But basically, we are going to have a conversation kind of like after the initial stream with Styx and Jonathan Peugeot, which I thought was an incredible stream, one of the best streams we've had, when we actually had to have a civil discussion about Christianity, paganism, and it was kind of like a little bit of debate, a little bit of discussion. Definitely check it out after you watch this. But this is an opportunity for you, for the people, to let us know what you think about Christianity versus paganism, and we have over here a lot of people coming in. We have Hopper, we have King Salmon, and of course we have coming in, we have Hemingway, who is a contributing writer to The Spectator, columnist for Young Voices. Speaking of which, by the way, I did poetry at 12 years old, and one of the magazines that I submitted my poetry to was Young Voices magazine. So I don't know if that's available somewhere on the internet. It may,
there you go.
Separate publication.
Yeah, separate publication. But who knows? Maybe I could write some poetry for you guys as well. We'll figure something out. So anyway, Hemingway, have you had a chance to watch the stream? And in general, you were making a point earlier on about this neo paganism that we may be seeing today. So take it away, brother.
Well,
what if I didn't watch the stream? What if I just you guys billed me and I just stumbled in here what's going on?
For context, I said that my one friend Conscious Abyss on Twitter was talking about his company, talking about this VR office space in the metaverse, and how the metaverse will sort of be like the Pleasure Dome Second Life reboot, but now it will integrate work. So for example, the past 2 years with remote working, it seems that work has consumed everyday life, but it's almost like the perfect it's the perfect capstone to the American residual Protestant work ethic, and how that's sort of like a sort of neo-pagan, the metaverse will deliver you into these realms of pure ecstasy, the way that some Eleusinian mystery taking ergot gas is going to deliver you into some kind of totalizing self-involved universe. But Quay, you had thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, this isn't the most on topic to the stream, but I'll definitely kind of share what I was saying before we went live. So what you're talking about, and I think this is a really good point, is the virtual reality aspect of the metaverse. But that's only kind of one side of it. There's the alternate reality side of it too. Cool VR, VR street art or whatever, where Zuck's trying to act or whatever. But it's alternate reality is this idea of overlaying virtual elements on top of the real world. So the first example, so I've seen a ton of comparisons to Second Life with the metaverse, and that's a totally apt comparison to the VR aspects, but I feel like fewer people have addressed the alternate reality aspect, and that's what I tried to do in this piece I wrote a while ago for National Review. But the alternate reality aspect, the real kind of template for that is Pokemon Go. And objectively speaking, Pokemon Go sucked. It was a poorly made game. It was full of glitches from day one. Some of the glitches they just never bothered fixing and said, nope, this is just how the game is now. It stuck as a game, but everyone was obsessed with it because it was the first taste we had of this alternate reality. But basically, one of the connections I made in my head was there was this thing where there was some island in some really remote part of the world that was the only place where this one rare Pokemon showed up, and you had to row to the middle of this island to get this Pokemon. And I was like, that's a pilgrimage.
Yes.
Oh god.
It's no different, right? You go to a pilgrimage to a place that's a shrine of a great saint because there's some sense in which something higher, some spiritual reality is breaking through our material reality in that place in a unique way. So, going to Canterbury to venerate the relics of Thomas Becket, it's how is that how is that different from going to this island to encounter this Pokemon, right? That you can look through your phone or your VR headset and see there and only there in the specific place. And the difference is, Thomas Beckett is present there in a special way through God's plan and God's providence and God's grace, and the Pokemon or whatever it is in the metaverse is there through Zuck. Zuck is God.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Gio, your keyboard sounds incredibly loud.
Sorry.
Just so you know, whenever you move around with the phone, it's a different microphone than your regular mic, so all the sounds end up being picked up. Not me though, because I have the emulation of this program on my computer. But anyway, one.
Yeah, Apple makes me buy an attachment.
One counterpoint.
No.
Wait, hold on, Gio. Real quick, one counterpoint that I would add to what Hemingway was talking about right now regarding Pokemon. I would agree with Hemingway when it comes to the actual, let's say, the aesthetics, not just the glitches, which I also agree with, but the aesthetics of Pokemon Go. They, as well as the new games, I find to be very dull, very base, not based, but base when it comes to the color design and when it comes to other design elements. So if you look, for example, at the original Pokemon games, I don't know if you grew up with Pokemon, but the original, Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, so on and so forth, they had a very limited amount of storage space for the data. But what they were able to do with that storage space, the way that they arranged the various figures, I would say that is very similar to a lot of these various Shintoist, Buddhist paintings that existed in Japan. And I think their sensibility of how they depict things using the least amount of details, that there is something about that. We were talking right at the end with Jonathan Peugeot about beauty, that there is something beautiful there, and that kind of beauty, I think, is something that can lift you up to a higher state. I would also say that Pokemon themselves are archetypes for different things. Obviously, I think there are archetypes that have been split into, sub-archetypes or whatever you want to call it.
Here we go.
Yes, but in general, I think that there is this Shintoist tendency within the Pokemon world, which I think also has been corrupted to a certain extent by other influences where it has cheapened it in a certain way. But I'm curious.
So you're comparing like early limited graphic video games to like the Japanese aesthetic notion of Ma or negative space.
Yes.
And the Japanese and the Taoist landscape painting.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes.
I don't know, Lev. That's kind of sus in my opinion.
No, but they come from the same. They come from the same origin. If we're talking about people who have passed on their knowledge of arts and crafts, for generations within Japan. So I don't see this as being that that great of a leap to make here.
Well, we have also in the space we have my good friend Frogbrain and also Josh Neal if they want to talk.
Yes,
you can request. But and also Butch, I wonder if like the way it works is like you have to at least follow us, and you have to realize we're also simulcasting on YouTube, so this is being recorded, and Odyssey and Twitch.
Yes.
So it's like we don't want any like gamer words or anything like that. But so anyways, to get back on topic, I did mention. Yeah, and also I have a point about the.
Oh yeah. So I'm a little out of my depth with the Japanese art history stuff that you said. It's certainly interesting, and I'll look into it more. What I would say with Pokemon Go is, it had sort of two alternate reality aspects. One was kind of visual, where you could look through your camera and see a Pokemon, and that was terrible. Like the proportions were off, the art was bad, like that was awful. What really hooked people was the spatial aspect of it, that by taking a walk or going to a real landmark, you actually accomplished something within the game. Like you navigated the game space by navigating the real world. I think that's what was interesting to people. That was what was really the draw. Like the artistic side of it was bad.
Yes.
And the game design part of it was bad. That was the only cool part, but people went insane for it, even though everything else sucked. And I think that we're just going to see the visual integration with the real world get better and better. And, if everybody went crazy for just this little taste of it that we got with Pokemon Go, I'm slightly terrified to see what we end up with
Well, there's so much tastelessness within this VR space, which I'm hopefully going to amend. You guys got to give me the power to create virtual worlds. I'll do a good job. But in general, just like that VR marriage, or sorry, that that virtual reality marriage. I don't know if you guys saw that, where these two, the guy and gal, they were in this avatar, which just looked so dumb. The avatars, they just looked very. Very, very tasteless. There wasn't anything special about them. They were just some stupid avatars, and yet they got married, and this is what they saw. That's the thing that I really dislike about this VR space potential, because most people are just going to go for the slop, and I'm not really sure what else to say there. But let's open it up to other people who want to talk as well. So,
well,
yeah.
I think it's interesting, though, before that is, I said this, I tweeted this once, because I read the one recent Zero HP Lovecraft story, that had like a lot of inspiration from. I remember that one video a few years ago, what hyperreality would look like, and sort of like the mass VR adaptation. And it's like you would see the street signs glow. You'd have like NFT, custom Air Jordans that look like ass.
You had that pet dog. Do you remember the virtual pet?
Yeah, you have virtual pets. But I think like what's interesting is that they were talking about how in the VR you would have like warning signs that would come out, like there would be speakers everywhere that your VR headset would trigger, and then you would get a message of some kind. And I said it's almost like we're entering this weird like almost, I would say, like like technology induced schizophrenia, which is quite interesting. That's related to this sort of mystical, like, the trees are going to talk to you now. It's almost like a return to a weird form of animism. I don't know about that, but it's interesting to say the least.
Hey.
Oh, sorry, I clicked on mute. I clicked mute accidentally.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I'm not stopping for too long. I heard you like denigrating Pokemon, and I just thought, no, this has to stop. But also,
oh man,
no, Lev. But no. The main thing I was going to say was the alternate reality thing, like the augmented reality, or whatever you want to call it, with the Pokemon Go thing. Like, I don't know if you had this in America, but here in the UK, people were getting robbed because of Pokemon Go. Like, people would set up them gym things, or whatever they were called, like a Pokemon hunt, and people would, like, come to a GPS area, and then everyone would get their phones robbed by people with knives. Like,
oh god.
Like,
that happened here too. Yeah,
it did happen. Yeah, okay. I thought it must have done. Yeah.
Walking into traffic and stuff and getting hit by cars too, trying to catch Pikachus or whatever.
Yeah, and then there was like other accidents
or going into the church, like during the funeral services, and trying to catch Pokemon there in church.
Oh man.
Oh my god.
So don't walk into the augmented reality with open arms. Let's say that, because there could be ways that people are trying to take advantage of you in this situation. But another thing that I wanted to ask as well, because I haven't actually had a chance to watch the stream yet, although I will do probably in the next half an hour or so. But who do you think won? Did paganism finally get a win?
It wasn't really a debate per se. It wasn't like a winner or loser thing. It was interesting though. It was like it was very interesting to hear Jonathan and Styx talk. And yeah.
What is Jonathan? Is he Catholic or is he just like?
He's an Orthodox. He's an Orthodox.
Orthodox. Well, as in like which kind of Orthodox?
I think Peugeot's in the Antiochian tradition of Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is like Romanian or
Antiochian is like Arab.
Yeah.
Right, so it's not like Coptic. It's a bit different to that or something, I guess.
Well, Antioch.
Yeah, Copts are non-Chalcedonian, so that's a separate communion from Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Well, the Antioch is around Turkey, I believe. Well, modern day Turkey, right?
Yeah.
So then that it wouldn't be Arab as a well. I guess you could say that the Arabs went into Turkey, but before that, the proper thing would be Anatolian. I guess I don't know what would be the distinction there, because you do have people who lived in that area in that region for a really really long time. I mean, in fact, we could say that the whole Noah's Ark story was possibly based on a real survival situation where there was a vessel that landed on Mount Ararat, from which point the survivors of the ancient civilizations had to restart anew. And it seems like, we find a lot of different, from what I understand, we find a lot of DNA related to the Indo-Europeans or Aryans or whatever you want to call them from that specific area. So I'm curious if you have looked into that as well. I've just been, very lightly looking into that whole thing, but I do find it interesting to think about how there may have been certain cataclysms that perpetuated this idea of Noah's Ark, as well as other stories that people have had throughout very different cultures talking about the same thing happening.
Yeah, I think it could be possible. I mean, but I don't. For me, like, I see a lot more of these stories more as like symbolic rather than literal a lot of the time. But like, but it isn't completely impossible. Like a massive flood could easily happen. Like we saw the tsunami in Japan. Like that could easily be like a biblical story if you wanted it to be.
But according to Graham Hancock specifically and Randall Carlson, there are these scablands. There are things that could be looked at as signs of this giant cataclysm occurring 11,000 years ago. So I wouldn't say there's nothing to back up a lot of these things. Same thing with something like Göbekli Tepe, which is also in Turkey. So this would also be somewhere very close to where the Ark could have landed, where this structure was buried for around 9,000 years, something crazy like that. And the archaeologists, so-called, are attributing this to hunter-gatherers. But this is a very, very advanced thing that I don't think hunter-gatherers would have any business constructing, especially if there are indications that the symbols there align with certain star patterns, things like that. I don't know if that's the case or not. That's some people are talking about that being the case, but I am curious, like Hemingway, have you looked into that whole thing about the flood and all that I mentioned?
And then we have Paulus next.
Yes.
In terms of the historicity of a like kind of a global or large scale flood, I haven't looked into that a whole lot. One thing that's interesting about Göbekli Tepe, from what I've read and listened to, is you would think, kind of taking a materialist set of presuppositions, that permanent settlements would arise as a result of, like, you'd settle near a river or near somewhere that made sense. But Göbekli Tepe doesn't seem to be there. Like, it seems as though it started out as a ritual site that, like, various hunter-gatherer groups would kind of travel to and perform rituals and then leave. And, like, as people realized those people needed places to stay and to eat and stuff, and so they started building kind of permanent settlements around it. So if it started out as a ritual site, and the place was either chosen completely arbitrarily, which doesn't seem to make sense, because why would people keep coming? Or the people who decided to set up the ritual site there were genuinely experiencing something in that particular place. Which kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier about, like, pilgrimage sites or thin places, that I think there are real places where certain spiritual forces can break through in a way.
Oh yeah. And Paulus, you're next, buddy.
Hey everyone, Paulus here from Myth Pilot. I just wanted to react a little bit to what people were saying about Pokemon Go. And what I think about that is that actually, what we're seeing is the beginning of a post-literate society and a post-rational society, and a society that is much more oriented towards kind of these imaginative spaces, but that are actually created for us in a way that they weren't before. And this is really interesting because this goes back to kind of the pre-modern mind. If you think about paganism, in the ancient world, every stream, every hill, every tree had its own spirit. And as you walked through the landscape, as an ancient person, it would really be alive for you. And there would, you would experience it through this mythic layer that was was kind of draped over the landscape. And what's really interesting about all this VR stuff, and then also even just about our digital age with TikTok and YouTube, is that right now people don't read books. They don't, the modern mind kind of reads theory, reads a few different books and magazines, decides, yes, I'm going to believe that, and then that's how you kind of construct your identity. That's not really happening anymore, and people also don't get a chance to exercise their imagination, right? As when you read a book,
Yeah.
you have to exercise your imagination so that you can visualize what you're reading. Really now what we're moving into is kind of this mode where you don't have an imagination. Your imagination is actually on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like it's like Rudolf Steiner, for example, who we were talking about before during the Styx Peugeot conversation, and I do want to get back to that initial topic of paganism versus Christianity. But regarding Steiner, he did not even recommend for little kids to play with blocks because he thought that blocks were too descriptive of something. So he wanted little
Minecraft. Hello.
he wanted little kids to play.
To Paulus
Sure.
a little bit there, because you really made me think of something when you were saying that about how it's post-rationalist, people aren't reading and stuff like that, and they're having their reality curated for them, basically.
Yes,
is kind of
yes.
what I'm getting at. And that to me reminds me of the point in history before the printing press, and where priests would read the Bible to people, but they weren't really reading it, they were just telling them what they wanted the people to believe.
Yes.
And then when they could read it for themselves, that's caused a Reformation and all kinds of bullshit to happen. So, it just reminded me of that, as if, because to me, I always see history in cycles, and it's almost like we're entering into that cycle again through.
We're going back.
Like through this new technology, we're kind of going backwards in
It
a way.
seems hyper literacy is pulling towards almost a weird form of neo illiteracy. But yeah, Quay, and then my good friend Fogbrain.
And also Geo, real quick, Geo,
I mean,
don't forget to mute yourself, Geo, when you move around, because there's.
Oh, sorry, I just had to get on my legs,
No problem.
pumping the blood.
Yes.
I think Paulus made a really good point, and that. Yeah, I think that there's this very Pavlovian idea, I guess, if that's a term. He did say during the stream that re-enchantment is coming whether you want it or not, and I think that the metaverse is a huge idea, is a huge aspect of that. Like Paulus was saying, people, pre-modern people would walk around and they would genuinely experience the world in this enchanted way. Like there's a guy, I forget his name, but he was a Christian missionary for these barely contacted tribes in the Amazon, I think. And he actually lost his faith and then wrote this book. So, he wasn't a Christian anymore. So he has no ulterior motive in saying this. But he talks about an encounter he had where this tribe was the whole tribe was standing on this river, looking out onto this little island in the river and saying there's a demon there. There's a demon standing on that island walking around, and he's standing there with them there's nothing there. He can't see anything, but clearly they all would. Clearly there's something going on there. So I think that's what the metaverse is doing, is it's just we've passed from this enchanted world to this materialism, and now we're sort of using the tools of science and everything that materialism in many ways has given us, and almost using those to circle us back into a kind of world that's been re-enchanted in this kind of jerry-rigged way, I guess.
I partly disagree. The reason why I disagree is when you have this virtual landscape, I think you're creating a closed loop where only the people who are, let's say, if we take the view of the brain as a receiver, when they're receiving particular bits of information, those are the ones that they are adding into this world. But I don't think they're allowing for this more natural ability to get in touch with the, whatever you want to call it, the Akashic records or the spirit world that, let's say, the people, like the tribal people you were describing, did have access to.
Oh, no, we're on the same page. No, that's why I think it's insidious, because we've replaced the idea of getting in touch with this objective spiritual world that's placed there by, I don't know, the Tao or the gods or God, depending on your tradition. And we've replaced this with, something that's placed there by a human controller or a set of human controllers, that even if they allow kind of third-party generated content within this metaverse, these third-party controllers are still the ones setting the terms. Zuckerberg and these other Silicon Valley types, they're the ones setting the terms on which, by which this pseudo-spiritual higher reality operates.
There was really...
To me, that's terrifying. It's like what C.S. Lewis talks about in The Abolition of Man. If you place this set of human controllers over everyone, they can just remake the world, remake humanity in their own image or in whatever image they want.
There was a very fascinating book which I highly recommend everybody to check out. It was recommended to me by Daniel Pinchbeck, actually. It's called Daimonic Reality.
Oh, God.
It was called Daimonic Reality by Patrick Harper. And it outlines a lot of these various meetings that people have had with these various spirits. So, for example, the Irish, when they meet fairies, they don't see the fairies as these small beings. Instead, when they see the fairies, they're these 6-foot-tall, godlike, blonde-haired, spectral beings that are kind of like the elves, you could say, from Lord of the Rings. And when it comes to the statue of Mary, for example, when it comes to the image of Mary that, let's say, you would see in South America, you would see in various places where they would claim the Virgin Mary appeared, those, according to Harper, were the same areas where they would have seen certain fertility goddesses appear to them, and they had like the same look of the beautiful, the beautiful woman. And there may be something to that world interacting with this world. And I think there may be also something with the UFO phenomenon, people reporting alien abduction. This is something that Harper also harped on about when it comes to those
UFOs
interaction.
And fairies are absolutely the same thing.
Yeah. But it's funny, that could be the next Keith Woods video. Well, fairies are... I can't do the accent.
Well, there's some fairies down there, laddie.
Yeah,
no, but he's got like the proper Irish Curl Mercs, third position.
Yeah.
Fairies in third position. Anyways, Fogbrain, you're up next, my friend.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here, and it's good to finally speak to you, G, on voice chat. I just wanted to kind of quickly touch on sort of the similar points that Quay and Polis, I think his name was, brought up about these interactions between, because the ethical and philosophical discussions around these VR and AR spaces and then the metaverse stuff, it's all coming to a head quite quickly. And one sort of thought, and Lev touched on it with the archetypes in Pokemon, is a lot of these culturally significant video games, not all video games, just these significant ones like Pokemon or Fortnite, whatever it might be, is I had a thought recently about them being like a collective sort of mandala of psychological essence or expression of how these particular developers or studios view society as a whole or a particular subject, whatever it is, and integrate how people directly interact with these expressions. And a lot of the misinterpretations about how video games developed, people are under the assumption that it's the same thing as like movie development or whatever. And, working in games myself, I kind of you get an experience and it's not the same thing. It's more don't get me wrong, there's still hierarchies in place and, there's people who have to answer other people and all that, but it's still a collective effort. And there's a lot of, even at the lowest levels, there is an artistic expression at some level from every single person who works on these games. And so these ethical and philosophical discussions about how this stuff is now being integrated into society as how people play within these spaces, and now they're becoming almost like a type of sacred space where people gather around and have these almost ritualistic I don't know what you call them, just places where people gather in one space to talk about these particular things or hang out, whatever it is. And it's a very difficult discussion nobody's really having yet, and it's only just coming out before we have to face people like Zuckerberg and all these other, very powerful figureheads who are really not educated on this particular subject, whether it's, the philosophical ramifications of it and the esoteric and exoteric, expressions of these games and whatnot, because they're becoming more significant. It is a ritualistic place for people to gather now in sublimation of, churches and stuff not being as in vogue as they used to be.
There will be church in the metaverse.
Fogbrain, I have a question for you regarding this. What do you think about the Tumblrettes, about all those people who grew up during the rise of Tumblr, who are now occupying certain positions, not only in universities now, but in various corporations, where they do have their own, I mean, it's such a tired term, woke culture, but you know what I mean. How much do you think that has not only seeped into the video game world as well as our collective unconscious, but how much do you think that there is an inherent, maybe not often said amongst most normies, but an inherent disgust with this particular culture that is also going to come to a head at a certain point?
Oh man, are we doing Gamergate discourse?
Yes, we're doing Gamergate
It does
Discord.
sound like that. Yeah, I mean,
We're gonna have a panel on Gamergate actually, but we have to
With a New York Times. I know a
journalist.
journalist from the New York Times who wrote about Gamergate. Obviously in the kind of way where the New York Times would appreciate his views. But it would be interesting to get him on to speak with some people. Yeah.
Get him on with Matt Forney and Davis Sereni. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah.
Sorry, Fogbrain. I realize I cut you. But if you want to do a Gamergate panel or anything with like Tumblr and its influence on the rise of woke culture, Catherine D does some.
Yeah, my good. Yeah,
Yeah.
She's
a
off
good
Twitter
friend of mine.
now.
She's awesome.
I can contact her though. I can. Yeah. We can get it done.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's just on the Gamergate thing. It has kind of already had its day in the sun, where the ramifications of the outcomes of what happened in Gamergate has already kind of, like, whatever insurgents of people that were kind of like taking control of these spaces and getting their positions into these various studios or entertainment industries. It's already kind of happened. They're now well integrated into it, and it is part of what the culture is now. Development culture, what it was 20 years ago to where it is now, is completely different. And it's going to keep, evolving into like a more extrapolated, more powerful version of where it's at now, to where they will be directing discourse. They already do that in some level with how they make aversively political statements in their video games. Not in the way that like something like Pokemon would, where it's like having this kind of like subtext about its, man's orphic relationship with, nature and the environment, its impact on that, which is like, it's fine to have those things. I'm not saying it's like a bad thing to talk about politics in video games on some level, because it's hard to get away from politics in general or not. But like when it gets more like, in the same way that like mainstream media is, it literally is trying to like tell you what to think rather than being some sort of artistic expression. Like because of how infantile gaming is as a medium, it's kind of it hasn't had that time to gestate itself to have these expressions be more meaningful and impactful, and really like meticulously go over these particular ideas and evolve them over time. It seems much more natural in its discourse than it is now, where it's just like it's overtly political statements and it's trying to tell what the viewer or the player or whatever it is exactly what to think. And it kind of goes, all the way down throughout, development studios and all that, where, the culture is telling them how to operate within the workspace, what opinions they should have. Because it's all about, like, it's a very narcissistic industry. I mean, much like the film industry is. It's all about, like, and that's how you get...
Well, animation industry
we talked
similar.
about this in the DMs. Oh, what did you say, Lev?
Well, animation industry, I think, is pretty similar today. And I am curious, you mentioned evolution. I am more of a believer in devolution than evolution, as in I believe in natural selection, but I believe it is much easier for processes to start devolving and degrading rather than building themselves up. And it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be certain ones that would build themselves up, but in general, I just see things as being way more infantile today. There was this one TikTok from Libs of TikTok, shout out to Libs of TikTok, who I hope we can have on as well, but there was this one TikTok with this lady who had these moles on her face, and she was a teacher for various grades in public school.
Oh, the fat one?
Yes, the fat one, and where she was mimicking how teachers react, how her students reacted to her adopting the pronoun of mix. So not miss, but mix. That was her pronoun, and how the whole thing just looked so infantile. The way that she was mimicking the kids speaking with her, and so like I almost expect there to be literal diaper wearers, not just the diaper furs, not just the baby furs, but like actual diaper wearing infants who are going to be adults, who are going to be going, being
They're
very
diaper
active,
people.
being very active, much more active than today within politics, within various spaces like that. I expect to see more people with the Zeta symbol on their Twitter profile, running for governor. Do you know? Do you know what I mean by the Zeta symbol? By the way, do you know what I mean by the Zeta symbol?
Yeah, I can't wait until I can't wait till 2050 when the Democratic nominee for president is a cat girl with a genetically an actual implanted tail that she can control, and the Republican nominee spent his 20s retweeting weird Zoomer theosis stuff, and they'll bring this up at debates.
Oh man.
You retweeted the tweet that men shouldn't see their wives naked.
Yeah, well, apparently, what is she? The Prime Minister of Finland?
Oh yeah,
she the 30-year-old.
Does she like?
Oh yeah, she is a cat girl. It's already.
She's a cat girl.
No, but is it confirmed that it is her who is doing those photoshops of her with the cat ears, or is it just some fans of her?
It was her. She's a cat girl. So,
yeah, but that's still
anyway.
That's aesthetically pleasing. So I would actually say, Hemingway, that I imagine there will be a Republican running for Congress who would be a combination, they would be a cat girl or a cat boy, but that would be much more aesthetic than the yes, exactly.
So that's.
But it would be much more aesthetic.
Yes.
It would be much more aesthetic though than, let's say, some of those demonic looking, who I'm talking about, who go to the reading for the children, I don't even know if we can mention who they are, but the point is that there's this very negative aesthetic having to do with a lot of these very exaggerated demonic features, and it's very different from, something like various
certain story hour.
No, yes, but it's very different from anime and Japanese video games, where you actually do have certain characteristics like that. Like in One Piece, for example, you have the Okama way, Emporio Ivankov, his name is, who is based on Dr. Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. But there is something very tongue-in-cheek about that kind of depiction, where a lot of these guys are depicted, they have the 5 o'clock shadow going on, as well as the lipstick, but there is something about that where they poke fun at it, and it isn't taken as seriously. But now I think within these spaces, it is something that is taken quite seriously, where if you even dare making fun of it, then you are seen as being, a bigot, and how dare you, and, they've taken all the fun out of a lot of these things.
Now. What I wanted to say with Fogbrain, then we'll get more speakers, is
Can I pose a question after you're done, actually?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
So me and him, we went over this in Discord and so forth, but this debate whether in this sort of Benjamin post-aura civilization, how if video games could potentially be a form of a work of art, because it even more than film, because you could have an auteur filmmaker. I guess you could have some schizo programmer like Yandere Dev, or that one guy that wanted to make his video game and submit it to, what was it, EA or whatever. But it seems that video games, it's the most controlled art medium, whether we can even call it an art medium, because we have this opportunity to have a purely immersive aesthetic experience that they've been talking about since at least the late 80s, the early 90s. There's this one Terrence McKenna talk about this Osmos thing that was in MoMA that was developed by these Montreal artists, where it was kind of like a VR rig that you can experience these different landscapes. Now we have the capacity to have a purely immersive aesthetic form, but it's just kitsch and selling the same old crap game engine to children. They have to buy Call of Duty every year. and it's like woke nonsense when it's not that. So I wonder, like, I'm very skeptical of claiming that video games are themselves a work of art, because it seems that like the Nvidia is releasing like Pokemon Go, man-made horrors beyond our wildest dreams. So I don't know about that. Maybe I'm just too much of a Luddite, I guess.
So
No, I
there's
would agree with this. Definitely, I don't, even being personally invested in it myself and caring pretty deeply about the medium, I just don't view it as an artistic form because of how early on, just from its own genesis, the commercial viability of it really just lended itself to being exploited by, the entertainment industry as a whole. And now because it's so profitable, it is the most profitable industry there is.
Culture industry, yeah.
It is
Right,
like the...
but y'all are completely, you're all black-pilled and super cringe right now, so I'm just going to be that guy for a moment.
Oh my god.
I swear to God. So I
Thank
was
you.
at Home Depot buying a singular board to support the people that hate who I hate, right? For, to fight the Antichrist or whatever. No, I'm kidding, but I did buy some stuff for work and to be grounded and like in real. So y'all are all talking about this simulation and all this stuff and how every aspect of it is like demonic and fucking evil and exploited and we're all doomed and everything's terrible and every possible criticism. And while I appreciate all those things and they are all actually enormously useful, I'm the kind of person who's like, I truly don't give a shit if anybody calls me a schizo because I understand network effects. And like when I say that I'm going to hit up Elon Musk through one means or another, literally the richest man in the world, I actually have information that makes that make sense to me, which is that like the degrees of separation from every single person on the planet, hyper facilitated by the internet, allow me to do that if I really want to. It doesn't matter if I'm literally nobody or I get called a schizo, because of course I would be called a schizo because people can't see clearly because we live in a cognitive dissonance matrix that everyone's flipping out about. And I'm just trying to get this esoteric psychological information to Elon Musk because there's a certain kind of shit math that I've discovered that might lead to genocide in his artificial intelligence projects, and everyone just kisses his ass or they're retarded and attack him. So he has literally no... I'm sorry, but this is the truth.
Yeah, the G word, avoid...
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's happening is that literally everybody... Elon has no real support. Like, he has no geniuses that are giving him the horrifying man-made horror, cynical engineering risks. Like, he's just constantly being, like, loved on or hated on. And there doesn't appear to be any, like, true geniuses around him that are... Because he even put out a tweet from, like, Scott Adams talking about how he runs into more Dilbert managerial problems than you would think. So
well, Scott, that's a red flag right there. Retweeting Scott.
Yeah, no, that was my point. So while everyone else is, worried about COVID, which I don't care about anymore for the most part.
YouTube, we got to be careful. We are on YouTube. Avoid that too, by the way. That
I'm not criticizing or saying anything. I said I don't care.
I know.
So here's the thing. Like, Metaverse is fine or whatever, and that's cool, but Elon is a far more capable human being, and he's also a very cool, like, good, funny dude. So this has provided an even bigger existential risk because he's far more likely to succeed. And in the same way that I have concerns about Lex Friedman, that, it's the same thing with Peterson. Like, for all Peterson's study of authoritarianism, he got real quick. And so, like, that's my concern with Lex, is that he's just surrounded by people with credentials just repeating jargon to him with no horrifying, like, brutal, sharp realism. Like, dude, do you have any idea, like, the infinite number of ways that this can go wrong? And, like, that needs to be of the utmost concern so we can make something cool. Like, because if it's almost inevitable that technology, gets to this point, like, why can't we make it something, like, loving and good? And, like, why can't we understand that the internal simulation that is created by our five senses we already live in a simulation, but there is an objective reality. So, like, whatever matrix will never ultimately succeed in destroying the soul. But, like, that's my concern, is that, like, we can make something really good and everybody's, like, worshiping demons and old gods and they're very, very deluded and confused. Whereas I just want to hijack this entire technology for something good, and I want to provide certain mathematics and esoteric psychology to illuminate some of the difficulties that we're dealing with, not only in artificial intelligence, but also the entire cultural war.
That's a good point. I think, like, Elon, he doesn't seem as much of a mark for himself the way that Bill Gates or other people do. But yeah, I mean, hijacking the system for good. I mean, that's the ultimate, I think, cyberpunk like ethos. But Quay, you've been waiting patiently, my friend. So
Oh, and also real quick
yeah.
before
sure.
wait, hold on, before Quay, I just want to say number one, everybody who is listening to this on Twitter, subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv, and this is currently being live streamed there, so you can watch the visuals. I am just actually going to start drawing live on the screen right now. I am finishing up Muskulls, which is this big NFT I've been working on, as well as two of the characters from in that, one of whom is named Trooster. That's the rooster guy with the big boobs. So you're going to see him as well. And anyway, do that, and patreon.com/breaktherules, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that's enough of me.
Well, I wanted to pose a question, but first, one thing that kind of sprang to mind as you were talking about like video games as an artistic medium is in Camille Pallia's book Glittering Images, which is kind of like a highlights of art history thing.
Great book.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, her last chapter is on Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, which is like she was clearly trolling a little bit by making that laugh. But one point she makes is like that big like special effects heavy movies, and I think you could transfer this to video games as well, are like the closest thing we have to a Gothic cathedral in the sense that like it's this large like multimedia experience where with a cathedral, you know, you would have stained glass and you would have carving and you would have carpentry and you would have all these, you know, minor craftsmen. Like you'd have one guy just focusing on like the very top of this one pillar, making it like perfect and beautiful. And you have the same thing in video games where, you know, maybe one guy's just getting this one part of the game perfect, and you might not even look at that with your character, but it's creating this whole world that comes together to have an effect, and you have, you know, music and everything. But anyway, I wanted to kind of go back to the stream and ask how Styx's remarks struck you, where he was talking about like Jonathan Pajot made this point of like, you need initiation, you need commitment, you need to kind of live into this in order to extract any wisdom or value from it. Whereas Styx was saying just like, no, there's lots of mountains and there's lots of paths up each mountain, and you try this path out and try that path out. And at one point he was even like, oh, I might go to a monastery for a few days, but like I couldn't commit to that because I might want to leave. I was like, oh, I don't know. So I was just wondering how that struck you guys.
I think like Styx just has terminal libertarian brain in my.
No, I completely disagree. My whole opinion on this thing is that there are different ways of getting to. Hold on, Twitter has crashed. I'm gonna open it again. Everybody who is live, just give me a second. You know, this happens sometimes. There's not much that you can do about it, so give me a second here. I'm joining the space again. Here we go.
Continue my point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
I think I mean, this is probably obvious based on how I framed the question, but I tend to agree more with Pajot in that I think that, you know, you're not going to extract any value or merit from a religious tradition until you fully commit to it, at least not in any real sense. You might get some kind of like intellectual satisfaction, some concept, but unless you really commit to it, I don't think you're going to get anything out of it. And also, like, there's this idea from the monks at Mount Athos that I've heard about, that you don't actually want to go into it seeking after spiritual experiences. Like, you don't want to become a monk so that, like, you can have a vision of Jesus talk to you. Like, in fact, they tell you, like, if you see Jesus, like, be wary of that at first. Like,
yeah, because you could invite in anything, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, hey, are you a demon trying to trick me? I'm just, you know, going crazy. Like, and then, you know, if you know, you're satisfied in this vision you have doesn't say anything to you that would make you suspect that it's not what it presents itself as, then, like, even then, your goal doesn't then become to, like, seek out that again and again and again. Your goal is to now, like, live out the rest. You know, you might have a vision and then go 40 years and then maybe have another vision. Like, it's about, you know, commitment. Like, it's, you don't get the good things. If you make the secondary goods your primary goods, you won't get them. If you make the primary goal your primary goal, you can get all the secondary ones and keep them in their proper place.
Yeah, even in Vedanta, they have a similar concept when you get to the level of jnana yoga, where it's like the sort of Western shyster stuff that, like, you see, like levitating or setting things on fire or whatnot.
Yeah,
like that was
the parlor tricks. But at the same time,
the parlor tricks.
I think that is that is something easy for a person to say, that you're going to go into this particular thing and you don't focus on the bright stuff. But, we're people, we're all fallible, and I think that those are the introductory things that people do yearn for when going into any of these kind of systems. Again, I can't get into the mind of everybody, but as far as the point that I was making earlier before Twitter decided to go kaput, is that I think that there are things that people can start to aspire to, even if people were living in a place without Christianity or without any particular religion. When they would go upon some kind of journey of discovery within the self, maybe they don't have any other teaching to lean on, but they do just have this inherent idea of, I'm going to still my mind, I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to try to focus on what exactly is out there above whatever perceptions I currently have. Then I think traditions do start to stem from something like that, and certain understanding of what is the right way to act versus what is the wrong way to act. I think people can get to that kind of level. And it doesn't mean that people should be spiritual tourists just going from one system to another, which I don't know if that was the point that Styx was making here, but in general I think the finding of wisdom can be something that would occur without these particularly rooted spiritual systems. If God is all around us, if this is something that I think is discoverable in life, not to say that you're going to figure everything out, but at least go on that journey. I wouldn't say that just these particular prescriptions for how to do it is the only way to do it.
I think the kind of main point of difference between what Styx was saying and what Peugeot was saying was, I don't know, Styx seemed to come from the point of view that like these initiatic rites aren't really, there's not much of a point to them. Like it's all just a laugh, whatever. And I disagree with that. I think it's fine to read the books and, be interested on some sort of aesthetic or, initiatory participation to these particular religions or rites, whatever it is. But what Peugeot is saying like active participation by the physical, embodiment of these rituals. It does take you to higher states of understanding and almost like you are kind of being part of this in-group of within that particular religion or whatever. And there's levels to that. And and it goes back like throughout all of ancient history, like with the Egyptian kings, where they would go through their particular trials and they would have to like physically go through rivers and these really spooky exoteric type initiations where, in order to like become king and ascend to this sort of demigod status, they would have to put themselves through a type of physical attrition in order to be not only see themselves as that particular status of being, but also like the people around them. And obviously this doesn't have to be something that like the average Joe has to do, but like even the act of just physically going to church and praying or whatever it is, that is a form of initiatic rite, just as you have, your communion and all that. So to do away with all that stuff and say like, there's no point to it, it's just a LARP is kind of ridiculous.
There is one problem though with what you're saying, I think. It's that we live at a time where people have access to an infinite amount of information as far as who has the right idea, whether Jesus was just a prophet or whether Jesus was the Son of God, for example, Islam versus Christianity in this sense. So you have different ways of interpreting things as well as questioning whether Jesus did exist in the first place. So imagine if you are somebody who seeks out the truth and you see all of this stuff that points to, well, this particular person may not have existed, there could have been this, there could have been that. You still want to grasp at the truth, but having to go through the rituals where you would confirm the existence of this particular being and attribute the quality of being, the Son of God, but also God, God made flesh, while you have all these other contradictory things going on in your head. It would be easier back when there wouldn't be as much of a focus on all these other things that are going on in the world, where things were not as interconnected as they are today. So my question to you is, do you just decide to, ignore all those things altogether? I'm not going to be aware of any of these other things, any of these contradictions that I've acquired, that I'm just going to be steadfast in believing these things and take any other notion out of my head? Or is there a way where you can seek out a certain truth while still having enough skepticism based on other information that you've encountered.
Fog, do you mind if I respond to that real quick? You can go first if you want, but I did want to say something.
Yeah, I'll be real quick on it. I'll just
Okay.
say that, like, it's certainly possible, but I do agree with you that it's more difficult than ever because of the deluge of information we have today, and plus the
Yeah.
lack of physical interaction with these initiatory rites groups that actually gain access to these particular forms of knowledge. Like, they simply don't exist anymore. Like with when Mithraic traditions were brought up and stuff. It's like that stuff's like not even around anymore. So it's impossible to do it. And so being like a truth seeker in this day and age, it does require to be more of a satellite observer rather than a direct participant, because of how like misleading and easily astray you can be. But I think it just takes a lot of time. Like there's
No, but you're also saying astray, and one issue that I would have with that real quick is that implies that you're already satisfied in knowing that you know the truth, while somebody would say, hey, I'm not going astray, you're the one who believes this particular thing, that I can, look at all these contradictions to it. So in that sense, who's to say who is right in that particular scope?
That's fedora tipping thinking right there.
It would be fedora tipping if the end result was atheism, and I'm not saying that that's the end result at all.
Well, I think that if you don't, sorry, Gio, did you want to say something?
No, I think Fog, you finish your point, and then Quay. Then I want to get some new speakers.
Sure.
Fog, did you finish your point, brother?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I agree with Lev that it is
Lev
easy.
rudely cut you off.
Sorry.
I
shall never do it again. I shall repent.
The example that I was going to bring up would be probably the earliest known of someone who did participate as an observer and then became someone of guru-like status in the end by being, and he was a satellite observer who'd go through things, was Gurdjieff. And meetings with Mark is a very good example of how someone who did start off as an observer that did become initiated in these particular rites and then became a master of sorts. It's obviously a very early example, but it's more modern than we have in other examples today.
Hey, I gotta go, but I just want to say that if you just listen to the tone of people's voices, me and Gio are obviously the happiest people in this entire group.
Oh, come on! What are you talking about?
Nihilism and postmodernism, all the Nietzsche stuff and all the, like, does Mark Zuckerberg look happy and satisfied to you? How about, like, any of these other people?
Wait,
that's my main point.
No, hold on.
I got defeated. It's true.
I got an issue with that though, because I am very much in the how do I say it? No, I'm not gonna say like, oh, everything is great for me, but I am gonna say that I do believe that there is a higher power out there. I may not be, let's say, steadfast in a particular faith, a particular path at this moment, but just the idea that is the only thing. I think that Gio is a very fascinating person. That Gio, you have a lot of different tastes that would divert away from a lot of your more orthodox, religious, reactionary-minded brethren. I think,
don't bring up that.
No. I think.
To be completely fair, before I leave, no, you're completely right, and I'm actually very, very happy that you feel that way, because, like, you don't have to necessarily be a Christian to have some idea of God's love, and like none of us are entirely coherent, or we would all just be levitating around or something.
Levitating.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of my point, is that I see Styx and Peugeot as effectively on the same path, which is that because of the inherent nature of reality, things just kind of work the way that they work, and everything is kind of okay in the Zen sense. But I do believe that Jesus is kind of the ultimate answer to this, because like nothing is ever perfect, everything is always flawed. So I feel like just to make coherent, paradoxical sense about reality, there kind of has to be at least one perfect thing.
Yes, so it's true.
That's kind of my take. So I gotta go. Bye.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Friend.
I would say that
take the floor, brother.
Oh, before that, I just want to say everybody subscribe. Everybody subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. That's all I want to say. Go for it.
Yeah, I will say, to me, sounding black-pilled, I am an earthly pessimist and a cosmic optimist. But yeah, I think. Oh, shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh no.
We were talking about like the ambiguousness of meaning and how it kind of like is a very difficult task to do in this day and age when it comes to particularly religions and stuff like that. Funnily enough, it does go back to video games a bit because in terms of laying out for the average layman, states of gaining higher attainment or ranking in a particular system, whatever. There's really no clearer line than like online video games. Like, so when you're going up in ranks and levels and stuff like that, being in clans and online groups, and then having this sort of particular godhood status with whether it's in RPGs or like the types of gear that you have. Like, that's the kind of like direct through line that I think religions or any type of like esoteric spiritual path kind of needs in this day and age to kind of cut through the level of ambiguousness and the deluge of information that we have today is something like that. But that's kind of reducing it to something that's very like it's gamifying it.
But the other problem that I've personally had is the idea, and I brought it up to Jonathan Peugeot as well, is the idea of, and again, this isn't coming from Neil deGrasse Tyson, atheist, like, oh my God, space. But the fact that there is, at least if you all agree that there is space out there, then there is so much different.
No, it's fake news.
Yeah,
it's the firmament.
Well, yeah, again, firmament again. Yes.
I see no reason why Jesus couldn't be the Jesus of space. Like, I don't buy your whole argument.
What do you mean?
I mean, literally, why couldn't there just be Jesus on Earth for all of space? Like, screw it, like, what if we're the special boys?
Well, if you're talking about Jesus being on other planets, then maybe. If you're just talking about this planet being the only one,
why would he have to be on other planets? That doesn't make any coherent sense to me. Like, why couldn't there just be like
No, okay, so basically what you're saying is all the other planets that are out there in the universe, they don't have any role to play as far as having the kind of experience of choosing between good and evil, or whatever you want to call it, that's happening over here.
That's not what I'm saying. Just because Jesus was geolocated on planet Earth doesn't mean that they have no part to play in the cosmic drama, and they can, I don't know, like the word could be spread to them. Like, I see no problem with this. Like, I'm in America. Was Jesus in America? Go talk to the Mormons. I don't know.
No, okay, but when you're talking about the word,
when you're talking about the word, are you talking about the word being spread through, let's say, a Christian galactic federation starting up on planet Earth and going everywhere into the universe, or are you talking about other Jesuses?
No.
Other Jesuses. Hold on.
Okay,
well, that's the other point then. If Jesus is the same everywhere, then you would have a Jesus Christ appearing on various other planets all throughout the universe. I could buy that, although
I don't think so. And also, like, you're pretty much calling Jesus racist for a man. So,
Wait,
there was that one TikTok priest.
He did make that comment to the Syrophoenician woman, but he was he wasn't being right.
Yeah.
Wait, you're cutting out there. No, I'm sorry, maybe I'm being a little bit daft here, but I still don't understand this, because you could have a figure like Jesus who ends up embodying the light of God on other planets. What you're saying is that no, that can't happen? I'm not really sure what you mean.
If I can take a crack at that, my response would be that, according to Christian dogma, like, Jesus Christ becomes physically incarnate as a human being, a member of Homo sapiens, and rises physically from the dead and ascends to heaven still in that body. So now, humanity is integrated in the inner life of the Godhead. And I just don't see how that would work if, like, Jesus were to somehow become incarnate also as other members of other species. Like, that would just, that to me, that just doesn't square with Christian doctrine.
That's
like,
fine, but does that mean
loosely as like chosen one? Like, you could say that, like, various spiritual teacher figures have emerged on other planets, I suppose. But
they're not going to be as important as Jesus. But they're not going to be as important as Jesus specifically on planet Earth. That would be the outcome of what you're saying, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
When you said that there would possibly be other spiritual teachers in other planets, but that would still imply, according to what you said specifically about Jesus Christ, that their importance in the celestial hierarchy would be below that of Jesus Christ specifically on this planet, specifically at that time.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
because
but I mean,
I would consider those to be spiritual teachers, not God become flesh.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I have the hard time swallowing. I can understand why you would disagree, but just so you understand my specific issue, it would be pretty much that. The singling out of this planet as far as the experience that embodied creatures would have in achieving a higher state of consciousness. That would be the big difference between you and me.
I don't know, man. He had to be somewhere, you know? And I don't see any reason why there be like spiritual teachers across the universe with the same message, but Jesus had to be somewhere, and it was, the Middle East. I don't know. He wasn't in California,
Yeah, I know, but the
He wasn't in
universe is so big.
Yeah,
So as far as that message spreading just from that one place and spreading nowhere else, that's a hard pill for me to swallow.
Well, anyways, we have to get some more speakers
Yes.
on. Kular, and then whoever wants to
Yes.
talk. I let in. I believe Murad in the last stream wanted to talk. So then Kular, then Murad. Please don't fed post. I made the mistake of letting in.
Wait, do you know the people?
troll.
Do you know the people in who you're?
Murad follows me. Yeah, anyone who follows me or Lev get let on.
No,
So we
no,
just
because
don't
you
wanna
could have trolls that follow you, Geo. You know that.
I have a ton of based and red pill trolls that follow me, but that's besides the point.
Here's the thing.
Bro,
If you fuck up, we're gonna put you on the list.
literally worship
There
a
we
Jewish
go.
man. I worship a Jewish man, and I live in Ohio. Can you comprehend how that might seem completely insane to some people?
Wait, do you
You know?
do you worship the Lubavitcher Rebbe? What do you mean you worship the Jewish man?
Literally, Christ.
Oh, okay.
All
All right, yeah.
Well, that's
Like,
debated
you know-
if he was still. Anyways, I'm not gonna get into
He's
that.
ethnically Jewish.
no,
at
but
the
you
very
kinda
least.
Ethnically,
get my-
yeah.
You kind of get my controversial point that he was theoretically other than me and in a completely different place and blah blah blah. But that's it doesn't offend me. I gotta go.
All right, King Salmonfish,
All right,
thank you so
see you,
much
man.
for coming in. Let's get some more speakers in here. By the way, subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. You can see me drawing a chicken egg over here, which is like an egg that's flying in the sky. If you go to the actual live stream that this is happening on, and this egg, once it falls down, here's the legend behind this. Once this egg bird falls down because it's tired of flying around all the time, then the egg cracks open, and inside of which grows up this creature who grows up to be this guy over here. So you could see it. He's this big chicken man with these protruding, hanging, sagging breasts, and his name is Trooster. And he looks up into the sky, and he's got, if you're not seeing the visuals, he's got one of these Asiatic mustaches. What do you call that style, Geo? Like the
Fu Manchu?
sort
The
of
Fu Manchu.
sort of a Fu Manchu. It's kind of like a mix of Fu Manchu and more Eastern, like Russian type of mustaches going on. Kind of like that painting that an ancestor of mine was in, by the way. So if you remember that painting that was done, this realistic looking painting with the, what do you call it, the Kazakhs that were writing a letter to the Sultan. You know what I'm talking about, right? So my father...
Oh, I
Yeah.
think the Reppin one.
Yeah, the Reppin. So my father's ancestor was the dude who was writing the actual thing down, sitting in the center there. So that's one of the people that I have my genes from. Anyway, let's get to some more people here. Let's see who we got, Geo. So we got
Merry Christmas and good Hanukkah, Lev.
Merry Christmas.
I am both Christian and pagan, and I believe the hollow earth is the kingdom of heaven, and then the hollow of space is hell. Does this make sense to anyone?
It makes absolute
Yeah, it's
sense.
outside the firmament. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if we're talking about Agartha, for example,
interesting.
if we're talking about Eden, the word Eden, from what I understand, is, well, the word paradise, rather, is enclosure. So it does make sense that the inner earth would have been the Eden that people who we now refer to as Adam and Eve, which I believe were multiple people back in the time, that's where they were living in. They were really comfy, but then eventually they had to go out. It's kind of like throwing your dog out into the backyard, which my Chinese neighbors did, by the way, because the culture that they came from there, not their kids, but the parents, it was very, let's say, hostile when it came to the way that the house dog was treated. So they took this poor puppy, and they put that poor puppy
Stream
outside.
taken down for racism, Lev.
culturalism, because it's a different culture. Like I said, their kids have a very different culture than the parents, and I think that their kids are never going to do that. They were very sad, and eventually they were complaining so much that the parents have put the dog back inside for a while, and then they put it outside again. But anyway, why am I talking about my Chinese neighbors? Let's get some more people in here.
Yeah, I wanted to respond real quick to the idea of like this paradise or Eden thing, where there's this long kind of geocentric tradition that comes in through kind of Greco-Roman paganism as well as Christianity, and you see it kind of reflected in Dante and stuff. But it's interesting, like in Plato's Timaeus, the earth is his kind of creation myth. The earth is the center of the universe, but it's not because it's the center in the sense of like the hottest place the best place in the universe, right? Or like the thing everything moves around. It's the center because like all the higher elements kind of further out, and all the kind of base matter drift, because it's Plato, matter's bad, right? So like all the base matter like drifted to the center, west to the earth. And so, like, it's at the center, but that's not, like, a position of pride. That's where all the garbage gets sucked into. And then, in Dante, you see that picked up, where, like, yeah, you have the paradise on earth, but, like, to go to heaven, like, it's the higher you go, the more ascended you get. Like, in a paradoxical way, when you get outside of all those spheres into the Empyrean, like, that's where the center, like, the true center in the sense, like, the most important place, or the place that occupies the central hall, like, is actually on the rim in some sense. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
That's a very interesting thought that you had right now, and it does remind me of the idea of getting stuck in, as the Buddhists talk about, getting stuck in, wanting to repeat certain sensations, attachment, that's it. So the idea of attachment in a gravity sense too, there's this mass attachment going on, which then ends up solidifying the spectral forms, and that's something that Rudolf Steiner also talked about, how we are the result of more spectral entities getting stuck and solidifying into particular ways of being. So I don't know, I do see there being a certain overlap between those two ideas.
So I come from an Islamic perspective.
Whoa. And Twitter just crashed. So he's probably speaking about the Islamic perspective right now. Gio, just let him know that this stream has temporarily crashed. I'm going to open it up again, so have no fear. I am opening it up. Everybody subscribe, by the way, to breaktherules.tv, patreon.com/breaktherules.
In order to be on God's true path. I just thought that was an interesting fact.
Wait, Murad, Murad, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Wait, sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt. The stream crashed, so whenever the stream crashed, what ends up happening is I have to reboot it again. So the only thing that I heard was Muslim tradition, and then it crashed. So if it's okay, could you please repeat what you said earlier as well?
Not a problem. So one of the titles of God is Lord of the World, that comes from the Quran, and the reality of the possibility of sentient alien life is something that in our tradition that our scholars have taken a look at. Of course, because we don't necessarily believe in the incarnation of the Logos in Christianity, it would not be the same theological problems, because God could send a messenger to any sentient beings that he created. And then going back further in the stream, I thought it was interesting that we were talking about like the necessity of initiation into spiritual orders. Because in the Sufi tradition in Orthodox Islam, that is very true. They say that you do need a sheikh, and that there is this very prescribed spiritual like leveling that you go through almost. So a lot of it has parallels in between these traditions. I thought that I'd just add that from an Islamic perspective.
And it's interesting that somebody like Gurdjieff, for example, he ended up going into Sufism ultimately as the true path. As far as where I end up going, I mean, who knows? But it is interesting to think about also the concept of jinn in Islam, where all the various entities, whether you call them fairies or whether you call them, whatever, they're all considered to be jinn. And there is this idea of these spectral entities in a hierarchy existing, and some could be good, some could be bad, some could be just like in between, playful, mischievous. And I hope I'm getting that part right. But I'm curious, Murad, if you have any thoughts on the matter of jinn.
Yeah, I mean, they exist, right? I've had experiences where I think, yeah, these are definitely jinn. There are good and there are bad among them. Some of them are Muslim. Some of them are, shaitan. just like some people act like shaitan or act demonic. So in certain places, in very traditional places in Africa, during circles of learning, they will leave a spot open for a jinn that may or may not come and join the circle. But as far as seeing them and stuff, I don't necessarily try and delve into that. It's very dangerous spiritually. So like,
although I am curious when it comes to even me drawing this, I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube or not, but I'm drawing this chicken Eggman over here, and I have this other drawing which I would say is very Jin-like in the sense that I'm very good at being able to create various interesting looking creatures out of my head. And you could say, when I say out of my head, I mean taking out of the collective unconscious. And I see there being a playful nature to that, where I don't necessarily see that as being evil or demonic in the Christian sense, but at the same time, I understand that what I'm doing, it's not, just sitting down and praying and fasting and getting into that higher spiritual state, but as somebody who does create, I do see there being a purpose to that. There is something very interesting about being able to create all of these various forms and tell all these various stories. And I know that in Islam it is haram to have any kind of depiction of anything whatsoever, which is something that as somebody who creates for a living, I would disagree with as far as my occupation goes, but also curious if you have any thoughts on the matter of art as well.
well, I'm not a faqih. I can't tell you what is haram or halal. That's something that except for the obvious stuff, right? Like obvious degeneracy. We all know that's haram. But as far as creativity and stuff, I would say you'd probably want to talk to like Dr. Shadi Al-Masri, who's over in the New Jersey area. He has probably more scholarly background in that. I'm not an artist, but I respect the arts, and part of Islam is beautification of the things around you. So we do have our own artistic tradition that tended to not go with the depiction of forms as much, although
aniconism, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we did have the miniatures tradition, which I thought was I like some of those depictions, but I'm not very learned in the arts. Not the most creative person on the face of the planet.
A lot of them was similar to the way that the Chinese literati painting depicted figures as very like alien and ghostly in a way, because the form of they believed that it was haram to have that sort of one-to-one replication of the human form the way that they would in Europe and other places. So what ends up happening is that you have in the Iranian miniature this approach to figuration, which is quite different and quite alien to the Western.
Like the like the leopard, for example. There was a leopard that was made out of Arabic lettering.
Yeah. Plus, like aniconism as well is this creation of this like proto-abstraction that comes in the Islamic world is a way of sort of going around that the sort of haram nature of the figure of the self. So it's very quite interesting. It's like, especially in Sufi Islam, like you have some of the great like Sufi mosques and so forth, madrasas that still maintain like the elaborate tile work, and it's quite. I remember like Władimir Żukowski, the art critic, had a great presentation from Perspectives on Islamic art. So let's get some more.
Although I do have one final question about Islam, out of curiosity. When it comes to books such as Bukhari, for example, how important is that in general in terms of Islamic jurisprudence?
Well, Bukhari is a book of hadith, right? So it's a book of traditions that are supposedly or not supposedly preserved from speaker to speaker. You get an ijaza in it, so somebody will give you all the hadith in an unbroken chain down to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It really depends on the particularities of the hadith, that hadith's context within the tradition, and also your own kind of your madhab or your way of viewing fiqh in and of itself, or like Islamic law. Because like when we say Sharia,
it's
fiqh,
like fiqh, not Sharia. Yeah,
but fiqh is applied, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, and there's different meta paradigms, I guess you'd call them, for how you view them.
Well, within fiqh, there is obviously matrimony law of inheritance, dietary law, things of that nature. But then there is also, for example, morality law as well as military law, and those things I think are always going to be part and parcel of the information that gets passed down. So when it comes to
fiqh is more fungible though. So as far as Bukhari goes, Bukhari is like a source text, but you would never go in there and just make a conclusion. It would be very uneducated to do so, in my opinion.
But let's say for example, real quick, Gio.
So.
Let's say, for example, you would have somebody like Omar who ended up going into Iran, obviously, into Azerbaijan, various places, and conquering it by the sword. So the question there is, would there have been a justification within something? Well, although he's probably before Bukhari, but in general, would there be certain justifications as far as going into a place? I mean, sure, you could say, well, they wanted to be converted, yada yada, but what would be a justification to pick the sword up in this context?
Well, I think in pre-modernity, a state of constant war, unless peace was explicitly implied, was the norm, right? And so I believe there's a lot of different historical thoughts on like what exactly occurred in the relationship between the early Islamic Empire and Sassanid Persia. I think they rejected the emissary, and that's a declaration of war, right? But I'm not an expert on that particular history. Like, I can't go into the reports and say X, Y, and Z, or like what is or is not allowed. And the J word basically is what you're talking about, right? Historically. So I'm not an expert in that stuff because, obviously not as applicable today in a time of wide international treaties, as lame as they may or may not be, depending on who's ruling them.
No, but that is an interesting question about the treaties.
Do you mind asking Islam
Sure,
question?
go for it.
So this is something that's interested me, and I just wondered, coming from a Christian perspective, and I just wondered if you had any thoughts on it, if you'd ever thought of this kind of from your Islamic perspective. But there's this idea I have that so Islam kind of formed as the Ummah, right, like as the political community, and sort of operated as this political religious community from its inception in a lot of ways, whereas Christianity started as this very small minority group within the Roman Empire and had that status for about 300 years. So I don't know. It's just interesting to think about like how kind of traditions of how to square your religion with the political system have evolved kind of parallel in Christianity, and I wonder if those differences in kind of conception of those two faiths have any effect on that. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Interesting.
I mean, that's something that people do address a lot. Like they say, oh, Islam was always a political force, but Christianity also became a political force too, right? In Byzantine churches today, they'll have a throne for the emperor of Byzantium. Correct me if I'm wrong, any Orthodox friends, but I remember seeing this, and I don't necessarily think it's incredibly wrong. Like, even in the U.S., we try to say, oh, we have the separation of church and state, but everybody knows that that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, because what did the founders say? This nation doesn't function without a moral and religious people, whatever that means. So
well, it's about keeping a good balance
because Muslims are used to winning and used to like being an empire that, they say, oh, Islam is always tied into X, Y, and Z, but there's probably even more to it. I don't think that answers the question, but sorry.
Well, there does seem to be...
No, that's fine. It's just something I've thought about. Yeah. No.
Well, also there's a criticism that in the BTR live stream chat, who is it? Let me scroll up here. This is... Oh, yeah, Hopper. Okay, Hopper says that the biggest problem with Islam is that there is no Trinity, unlike Christianity, just some faceless monad, which leads to perennialism. And it is true that a lot of perennialists later became Sufis, but I guess that they believe that Islam had the simplest and most direct sort of like route. It was like the most conducive to a perennial sort of a...
I think you'd have to expand on that more. Because obviously, like, we believe like we are quote unquote perennialists and that we're like the last in a chain of truths. So that's probably one of the reasons why it lends itself to it. As far as the differences between that and Christianity and the theistic or the Trinitarian stuff, I'm not educated enough to tell you, but I don't quite understand where he's getting at.
Well, I guess like because it did have that like very direct route to Allah. Like I think that it's like the framework of Islam itself up until like, you know, I would say like later permutations, it is conducive to like a sort of perennial, like especially Sufi Islam would be like the perennialist religion, you know, like Gunyan and so many other ones of that, you know, school. They like converted to either Sufism or to some kind of like, you know, esoteric orthodoxy. Some of them still like latched on to Hinduism, but that was, you know,
starting like with Ivan Agueli and stuff. And going to Guinan and then supposedly Evola, but I don't buy that.
Yeah, they say Evola was like he became like an esoteric Catholic later, but I don't know. I'm suspicious of that claim. He was certainly sympathetic to both, like even like Wahhabism. I mean, of course, I mean, come on, that's obvious.
No,
but,
that's
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean that's obvious? Because I know that there's this conspiracy theory revolving the origins of Wahhabism, and at a certain point, I just want to say that when it comes to, I'm not specifically singling this out, but in general, when it comes to anything that you perceive as being bad or wrong or things going the other way, I think that there should be at a certain point owning of certain things that happen and not attributing them to things that you would have no power over and that wouldn't belong to anything associated at all with any religion or tradition.
Like with Wahhabism, like as a conspiracy theory or something, saying the British did it.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't. that vein of things has existed for a long time. It's certain theological errors of Kharijism that just tend to pop up every once in a while.
So I guess,
although I do think that by the 19th century, it did like become advantageous for the British.
Well,
so, like,
I consider myself sort of part of that theological school of Atharism, though I'm not part of the Najdi Dawa or Wahhabi tradition, because inevitably what comes with those movements is that they are basically like everybody is on the hawk except for myself, and they go and kill a bunch of people, right? Which is what we've seen. Whether it was the first Saudi state, second, third, whatever. So, but I mean, you can't discount and say, oh, everything's a conspiracy. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's a whole different conversation. I don't want to drag on the stream. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Absolutely, Murad. So let's see who else we got here. Once again, subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. I mean, I'm drawing these.
We have Mason.
Excellent, Mason. Mason, what's up, buddy?
Lev and Gio, I'm a big fan. Love what you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
How did you discover BTR? Out of curiosity, real quick.
I guess through Styx and Paggio, and I'm a big fan of Peterson. I've kind of just stumbled my way into these interesting parts of the internet, really.
There you go.
So yeah, I just wanted to talk about, I haven't watched the video with Paggio and Styx yet, but I'm a big fan of both of them. Just spirituality, coming back, religion coming back, after, feels like, atheism is kind of, it's just not as prevalent as it was with the days of Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins and that kind of
atheism plus
that kind of way.
You remember atheism plus?
Even in my realm, like in the kind of more like emo punk scene, which I'm like in, I've always found it funny how obsessed with crosses they all are, and satanic and that kind of 666 and all that kind of shit too, but. They put crosses, on their ears. They put it on, upside down, which is also, it's Peter, I think, was crucified upside down. So it's still a Christian, image. So I've always found that funny. I just wanted to hear y'all's take on that.
Well,
it's sort of like an edgy, haha, like owning the trads. I think
no, that's partly of it.
That energy is still there, but it's not as like.
No, I think there's another aspect to it though. No, Gio, I think there's another aspect to it though. which is look at like the Goths, for example, who you could say, well, they were poking fun at their, normie Christian parents, but at the same time, this idea of arranging yourself with the cross and all that, the cross is a super perennial symbol. I mean, it's literally two sticks, just combined together, and what you get is a point of everything meeting at one, in one place. That's what you get with the cross. So, for example, if you're looking out there just in perspective, you look anywhere, what you're going to see? You're going to see perspective lines meeting in the middle. You don't physically see the lines, but you basically see everything that you see meeting in the middle. So there's an up, down, left, right. You're always in a cross. We are always living in a cross. So I think it's something that's always going to be perennial, and that's what I got to say about that. I mean, I do physically see one as well.
And on the other, sorry.
No, I just want to quickly say I do physically see an actual white cross in meditating as well. So that kind of solidified this idea that this is a perennial thing that people can observe.
No, and they're still doing it. They put, as I said, cross earrings and all that kind of stuff. It's very big, and also on the other side, I mean, the amount of Wiccan books and stuff I've seen. I mean, I guess that was my point. Is like spirituality coming back in a very big way. I mean, yeah, and at the same, I'm sure, especially a lot of kids in the kind of scene I'm involved with, they probably tell you they were atheists, but they definitely don't act like it.
Well, what would you say that your audience acts like today versus when you first got started? What are some of the differences that you've noticed?
I would just say there's more of a spiritual kind of aspect coming back. I think like I was saying with Wiccan stuff and different kind of spiritual stuff like that. I think people are let's see, they're always interested in astrology.
Well, kind of speaking of which, by the way, we are going to have an astrologist, my friend Michael Scotto, back on. So, Mason, if you ever want to get a reading done live or not live or private, that's definitely going to be the stream to attend. And he's been predicting a lot of things. He predicted the current situation that we're in right now with the, as I like to call it, the Backstreet Boys World Tour. And he predicted this way back in 2019 in the summer, where he said that there's going to be this big thing that's going to change everything, and this thing is going to have something related to China about it, and it's going to happen around like December or January. So that's what he said to me when we were sitting at a pizza shop in New York City in the summer of 2019, and here we are today. So this is definitely someone who I would trust with things like that. I'm trying to figure out, maybe there's a way we can make money or something, using this, the astrology powers.
I feel compelled to throw in a disclaimer and warn you guys away from such mind spiritual influences.
All right. What's the disclaimer in full, you'd say? Like, what are some of the things that you would be hesitant about when it comes to astrology?
Well, I mean, there's certain astrological kind of themes or tropes that show up in the Bible. So I'm not going to say that like everything is BS, but there are like pretty strong prohibitions against engaging in forms of divination and stuff like that.
Soothsaying.
Yeah. I just think that generally speaking, whenever you're trying to open yourself up to the spiritual world in a way that's not mitigated through Christianity, you're always putting yourself in danger, whether that's through tarot cards or whether that's through like psychedelics.
But that is
like,
that is
I have an experience there. Like I think that can be through media that aren't necessarily explicitly Christian in a way. I set the rules for God, right? We know where the spirit is, but not where it isn't in a way. But I think that, it's putting yourself in danger when you engage with those forms of spirituality.
Well, that's the big question when it comes to humanity in general. If we look, for example, at the idea of there being a certain growth process happening, alongside with something like Christianity coming to the fore, then one interpretation is that human beings go from a state of being babysat by Mother Nature, for lack of a better reference here, where the human beings are more puppet-like where they're more living in the kind of state where they hear the voice of the gods, they operate under those parameters, and then all of a sudden you get this more of an idea of the self. You get the separation of ancestral blood memory, and you have more of the sense of you as this individual entity. And I think that that may be, if I were to look at the grand scheme of things, just my own interpretation right now, is that idea of being yourself means that you have a certain amount of responsibility now that you didn't have otherwise, where the decisions that you're making, they may karmically or whatever affect you that much more significantly because you are taking more of a charge of the decisions as opposed to having them just guided from something else. So much like if we're talking about societies where there is a law that if you do something bad, they're going to chop your hands off, or they're going to do something that would be, very gross in a modern context. And you could say that those people who undergo that kind of state of conditioning, they're more used to the idea that I'm going to do something. I'm not going to do something bad because I don't want my hands chopped off, as opposed to I'm not going to do something bad because inside I would actually feel bad and I would feel like I would be hurting the person by doing this particular thing. And I have noticed that there are people like that when you apply force, when you apply strong laws, they come into obedience. When the laws are out, when there are no laws, then they start to act really horribly and do very despicable things. But then you have other people that were raised in a different way that just generally, they wouldn't lie, they wouldn't do any bad things, not because they're afraid, not because they think that if I'm going to lie or do these bad things, I'm going to go to hell, but in general because they have that much more of an idea that, that I cannot live with myself. I cannot live with myself for doing something horrible to another human being. And so what exactly I could attribute that kind of growth to, this, this taking on of responsibility, I wouldn't say that the only way to do that would be to have somebody tell you that if you're going to do wrong, you're going to hell. And I wouldn't say that the only way to achieve that is to be in an organized religion. But that's all I got to say about that.
Well, that's kind of a simplistic equation there that I think a lot of people get confused when it comes to, specifically American Protestant version of evangelical Christianity, do good or you go to hell. It's kind of, I don't know, that's there's a more complex equation when it comes to how you align yourself to the lessons and the behavior of Christ. There's something else going on there than what a lot of the media depiction of it.
No, but as far as most people though, if you're a peasant living in Europe, I mean, for one thing, you hardly even knew what the priest was talking about if you didn't speak Latin, before a certain point where these books start to get translated and redistributed with the printing press. So before that, number one, you didn't even know what the priest was saying most of the time, if I get that correctly, and number two, I do think that people, would operate more in the sense of fearing punishment, fearing damnation, as opposed to inherently feeling that if I do A, B, and C to this person, that's going to be, inherently, self-evidently wrong. At least that's my interpretation.
I think that, I mean, there's something to that. I think, obviously, it's better if you choose to love and follow Christ out of love for the truth and for goodness than out of fear of punishment in some sense. But I think there's also a flip side to what you're saying, which is there's this idea, especially I think on kind of libertarian Christians, that the society we're living in now is kind of the best possible one, because if someone chooses to follow God in this society, ideally it's resolved this the choice with the highest degree of freedom possible, and that I think this is something I'm kind of torn on, because there is something to that, but there's also a degree to which I think that the classical tradition was pretty much unanimous on the idea that laws exist to inculcate virtue, not simply to free people to make the maximally free choice in every given situation. And then I think you end up stumbling on ideas of what is what does it mean to make the choice with the highest amount of freedom possible? Like, is that even a coherent concept? Like, is it possible to have this kind of completely neutral society in which everyone choose equally, or is the idea that there's this blank slate just a mirage, and are you actually being inculcated and indoctrinated with certain ideas that just Christianity? And I think that there's a lot we're starting to see with books and so on that backs that up.
I don't know. It's interesting. Like with the woke stuff, we are having other groups of people coming to the fore, like parents who are very dissatisfied with the kind of critical race theory education that their kids are getting. I wouldn't say that a lot of those parents are religious or traditional in the classic sense. Oh, hold on. We have crashed one more time. Everybody bear with me. I'm going to go back into the space once again. Oh, I switched accounts. Never mind, I'm going back in here. Hold on. Everybody, be patient. I am navigating this thing. Patreon.com/breaktherules. You know it, you love it, you want it, you need it. I'm coming back into the space. Here we go. Hold on. I was out. No, I am back. I am back in the space. Sorry about that, everybody.
Unless he's just taking a contemplative pause.
No, this is what this is what happens when you use an emulator. But it is well worth it because I hate using the phone. I love the emulator much more. But anyway, the point that I was getting to here. Let's see if I could bring that point back. It is that I feel like a huge portion of people who are reacting to a lot of this woke stuff that they see on the internet. In a way, I feel like there's also a bit of blindness going on there for the majority, because I feel like a lot of their motivation stems from their disgust, and probably rightfully so, at a lot of these things that they're seeing. But at the same time, I think it makes them perceive whatever, and again, I'm not singling anybody out here because I know that none of you think that if we go back into the good old days, then everything would be absolutely fine. That would be a gross mischaracterization. But I would say, though, that certain aspects that existed back then end up being temporarily, let's say, ignored or maybe justified sometimes. And my concern here is that I don't know what it was like back then. The only way we know what it was like back then right now is just reading historical sources, reading what people said, but even that's not going to be enough to really know. The only thing I would say would qualify as far as being as close as possible is if, let's say, you have a relative, you have somebody who's really, really old who lived during the 30s, 40s, in more of a rural setting. That, I think, would be the closest thing to it. And even there would be a certain amount of bias. But the reason why I'm saying this is it may be that a lot of the fears that people have of the old days are unjustified, and there may have been this natural order that people followed and were, that they were more in harmony. Or it could be hell on earth. Or it could be a kind of barbaric society that we can't even imagine. And I'm not saying this to justify the wokeness. I'm not saying this to say that this idea of this purely materialistic landscape is healthy. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm trying to get at here is that there could be a way to balance these two things together. So as far as looking back in history, I'm not going to speak to the Russian peasantry because that is my particular pet peeve as far as the things that I found out about it. But as far as, let's say, European peasantry, how a lot of people function back then, what exactly would be considered to be... We got a $15 patron, Samantha. Thank you so much for becoming a patron.
Nice.
I just wanted to announce that right now, right here, patreon.com/breaktherules. Anyway, going back to this question of what life was like back then, the one quick illustration I would make of a historical, historical reference, I don't remember exactly where it's from. I spoke about it earlier. With France, pre-revolutionary France, there was this scene depicted of men and women meeting up, having coffee or tea or whatever, or snails, frogs, whatever they eat there, and they were watching. They were watching someone being punished by the wheel. Having their entire body be torn.
Catherine wheel.
Yeah, the Catherine wheel, torn limb from limb, and they were just very casual about it. This was like commonplace. So if I compare that, that being commonplace, to today that being seen as very barbaric, I would say that we do have a different psychology when it comes to what is acceptable, and I wouldn't even go as far as to say, well, that was acceptable to them, so, maybe we can get used to that again. somebody, is that snoring or is that the chair? But anyway, you get the idea what I'm trying to get here. So I am curious from...
It's my cat, I think.
Aw,
purring.
that's even better. Yeah, so go
Yeah.
for it, Quay. Yeah.
I get what you're saying, Lev. Like, there is definitely a temptation of glasses, and like in William Shakespeare's time, like the plays of the globe, like Hamlet, like his competition wasn't like other plays as much as it was like bear baiting.
Yes. Yeah.
It was like, oh, should we think of it as so high. Back then it'd be like, oh, should we go see Hamlet? We should go see a bunch of dogs tear a bear to pieces. Like. How people talk.
Yeah, exactly.
We should bring back that term for something bear baiting. That could be
Is it really all that different in
Bear
this day and
baiting
age,
is when
by the
you-
way? This
Bear
kind of like voyeurism for barbarism that we already have. Like, you see, like, Live Leak's not around anymore, but like, graphic videos online and stuff like that. It's almost the
crazy
same.
shit.
Well,
That's
the
I was gonna say
voyeurism...
sorry, real
yeah.
quick. Can I jump in?
Go
I was
for
gonna
it,
say
go for
bear
it.
baiting is when you take a gay man who's like very large and is where you put like a character who's a gay man who's very large and very into a piece of media in order to get those.
Oh,
like
God.
queer baiting, but just bears.
Oh, man.
Oh my, the bear! I get it. The bear, yeah.
Yes.
I guess the otters are going to bear baiting.
But yeah, there is this temptation to like romanticize like the old illiterate peasant who just like is this devout Christian wherever he is, right? And I think there's some truth to that. I remember when I was in Spain one time, I like climbed up this mountain and there's like a cross at the top. This other guy who was climbing the mountain and he's just like, oh yeah, we have this cross here. Like say a prayer to the patron saint of this mountain range to like for like a safe descent. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But then like also I was literally just on a flight like a week ago and I was sitting next to this Russian woman and she was like, I was asking her about like Russian Orthodoxy and she was like, oh yeah, like people just go through the motions and then they just like donate money to the church. The priest will pray for them and they think they're covered. So I think there's both, and I think there's pitfalls involved in like universalizing either.
I agree. It's important to get a good balance of these things. By the way, is that your cat?
So,
I feel like somebody's
roll
snoring
and
in the background. I feel like somebody's snoring in the background. I don't know. Are you sure that's your cat purring? You sure there's Anyway, let's go to the next one. Tom.
Yeah, Roland.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's my cat Gertrude. She's laying on me. So.
Go for it, buddy.
Well, I came in a little late. I came a little late to the space, and I appreciate you guys letting me speak here. I will say that one thing that we kind of have to think about is that there was a diversity of views, even when it came to like Christianity for the peasants, for example. Like, I would say that most likely you had people with different intensities of faith, and I think like people romanticize the amount of faith everyone had. It's that people were like, yeah, I believe it, and some people were like, I really believe it. And I think now, since we've lost that disconnect, a lot of like westernized countries have lost that connection with the idea of like, yeah, you're Christian, but like you can like choose how intensely you want to be Christian. I think that's one factor, and I think now people are kind of searching for their intensity of faith, and they're finding like a weird esoteric versions of Christianity or other, I don't want to get into like the most basic bitch, like they're finding other like means of expressing that intensity in other platforms and other beliefs and other organizations and so on and so on. And I think one issue we have in a lot of the Western countries is that there's this disconnect between like the grandparents passing that on. A lot of grandparents didn't really enforce religiosity on many people. I think maybe I'm talking out of turn because of my experience, but a lot of grandparents never really kind of pushed their faith on their kids. And I think the grandparent question, the GQ, is such an important thing because that's kind of the person that gives you that older knowledge, and people never really experience that. And especially now, since grandparents are encouraged to just like fuck off and like rent RVs, like you're just gonna keep losing that connection to the past, and then you're gonna be forced to just go on Reddit and figure out what you believe in.
Amen, brother.
No, that really sucks. I would say that for my own family, my grandma is still there with us. knock on wood. That's acacia wood, by the way, from my standing desk. But my grandma, she's 80 years old, so she was born in 1941, and she was born on a boat when they were evacuating St. Petersburg during World War II. So she's got a lot of memories, a lot of recollections. One of the things that she has is her grandmother was one of the kindest people in the world, extremely welcoming, who ended up getting married to this asshole guy who I think he gave her beatings and things of that nature, but in general, just like this was not a nice person. While at the same time, he was a practitioner of the Jewish faith. He was he was considered to be very religious, very pietous. But the fact that he treated my grandmother in this way, as were other people, that would not be something that I would want to have transferred into the next generation, despite any of the wokeness stuff that we're talking about. So her, on the other hand, like, she was ultra welcoming, and during the pogroms that were occurring around that time, I believe that she was saved by the people, by the ethnic Russian people who were around that area, because this is how kind of a person that she was, and they saw that in her. I'm not sure if she was as practicing, and my grandma, obviously with the USSR, not practicing either, but the fact that you were still able to take in, and I am able to still take in, the kind of qualities that my grandmother possesses, that I think she passed on to my mom, and so on and so forth. That is something very important. I think that goes beyond just going into a room and praying, and I'm not saying that that's bad, but I'm just saying that I think that there are certain cultural qualities that should be passed down, and we're at a bit of a breaking point, like I said before, where there's so much information out there, and the whole space thing that I personally mentioned, I'm not going to get into that again, but there's so much stuff out there that makes me think it's going to be very difficult for people to just say, I am going to reject any counter knowledge to this particular thing and just go with it. Maybe that is going to be the case, but I think that that's a big problem.
A certain level of openness to what you selectively take on as the next generation is up to you, but having that window into those, I don't know what you call it, old world values is definitely something that a lot of younger people should be more open to today.
Yes.
And and the problem is that window into that particular old world is really closing quickly, because like they're all dying off now. And going back into this kind of like shell of looking these things up on Reddit or online or anything like that is it only adds to the noise of things. It's gone from like this inverse of where the peasantry would be like closed off to the world back in the day, and it would have to kind of rely around the community around them to kind of instill these particular values, or the religious institutions that they would go to. And now it's the inverse of that now, is that there's just so much noise to it, and it's the difficulty is deciphering between that noise what is the truth and what is the lies of it.
Well,
Yeah.
just to push back on the total black pill a tiny bit is I think you can make a lot of analogies between living through now and the environment in which Christianity actually first emerged. The Roman Empire at the time was incredibly cosmopolitan. You obviously didn't have the internet or printing press, but like you did have this large empire where you could disseminate information across the entire empire, safety of travel and stuff. You had enormous diversity of religious expressions across the empire, all of which were more or less integrated into all of which were more or less integrated into the empire. It was like, oh, I'll try this, try that. A lot of syncretism, a lot of you even had this large proportion of people who were called God-fearers, where there was this big like Judaism fad where nobody wanted to get circumcised for obvious reasons, but these like Romans and Greeks would be like, oh yeah, I'll like get to the synagogue, go hear what they have to say and stuff. So I think in some sense you could say like, yeah, right now the hyperabundance of information does make it difficult to make this absolute commitment. In the same way that like the availability of casual sex makes it difficult to get married, but at the same time, like people do still get married, and it happened in the Empire, and I think it could happen again.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. We cut off Roland, so I want to give him a chance, but also I think that it's just
Sorry about that.
It's no. We all did it. No, I think it is true. People do get married, but there is sort of the air being sucked out of these institutions because of the sort of uniquely modern condition. But sorry, Roland, you wanted to follow up with what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, you guys made a lot of great points, and I would also say is that, like, what we're gonna pass on to our kids, and I hope all of you have kids, unless you're ugly. Just kidding. Is that like what we're gonna be passing down to them is essentially like a cockroach mindset, which is like, kids, just get do as best you can without getting caught, and make as much money as you can, and be as stable as you can. Like that's the advice that our kids are probably gonna get from us, even if we want to say it or not. Like we're not gonna teach them to be like we're gonna teach them to be assertive, of course, but I think one issue that we're gonna be passing, like one thing we're gonna be passing down, is that kind of like our lived experience, and we're not gonna get the lived experience of like, so let's say someone from like the Oregon Trail or something. And I think that's kind of a sad reality that we have to deal with. But it's not like, again, I'm not like black pilled or anything. I'm a pretty white pilled guy about the future. I think these conditions will produce a great turning point. And
turning point USA. Or just
no. Turning point UK, dude. Come on. No, but regarding the whole the Christianity thing, I think you're totally right there. Say is that right now, since there is no real belief system, even the Christianity people believe in is kind of like wonky, because it's like you're not really expressing it. It's like the Christianity where you're like, I love everyone. It's like, then you're not really like, how can you believe something if you don't like oppose something at least, or like assert yourself in a way where you make yourself antagonistic to others? Like Christianity came out and like it literally challenged the fucking Roman Empire. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not challenging some LGBTQ TikTok mom. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, no, you have to be confrontational. But
I would challenge that what you just said right there.
Go for it.
All right. Well, I think, before I became a Gnostic, I was a Christian for a long time. Actually, a fundamentalist Christian. I was a Catholic. I jumped around. I went to evangelical. I became a born again. I was in prison for a while. That's where I found the Bible. I read it like 4 times when I was in there. And if you really break it down, the New Testament, there's verses that tell you, like, for example, give to Caesar what is Caesar. Sounds simple, but there's principle behind it. And it's backed up by other verses. For example, Jesus saying, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be known to God. Let every person be subject to government authority, for there is no authority except for God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Be subject for the Lord's sake for every human institution, whether it be the emperor or the supreme or the governors sent by him to punish those. Basically, over and over, it's Christian theology to not give a fuck about what's going on. The archon principles and archons of this age, right? They're going to do what they're going to do. They're wicked. There's nothing you can do about that. Satan owns the government. Your job is to get saved and get other people saved and go to heaven. That's it.
Well, that's
that's
a
very
very
disagree with me what I'm saying.
Appropriately, that's a very Gnostic view. If I can see it right in your name. But yeah, the idea that like the world, the social world, and the material are evil, and that like it's our goal to escape and go to heaven is a very Gnostic. I think it's a very Christian idea. That strand certainly is there. That there are powers of this age.
Turn the other cheek.
Yeah, and turn the other cheek. Yeah, certainly.
My question is, where in the New Testament does it say to be a rebel and to fight against the government? Where does it say that?
Oh, it doesn't say to fight against the government. I would agree with you on that. St. Paul didn't show up and say like, slaves take up arms and kill your masters.
He didn't have a "not my emperor" sign for Nero.
Exactly. No, I mean,
but he was arguing with Agrippa, who said, "I may have but little faith to believe in what you were saying, St. Paul." So that was like sort of power of persuasion to go up against kings with his new faith.
Well, when Paul said like be subject to the authorities, like the emperor at the time that was. It wasn't like be subject to the authorities if they're like, but otherwise rebel. I mean, he was certainly saying, and he didn't say saying like slaves take up and kill masters. He said slaves obey your masters. At the same time, he was injecting this enzyme into history that did ultimately lead to the abolition of slavery, the only civilization to ever abolish slavery, by the way, which then led to its basic abolition.
I will say this though, to agree with you, the Book of Galatians is definitely a liberty-based, philosophy behind it. And Paul himself, like you said, he was going into synagogues, guns blazing. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's all about just sitting in the corner and not doing anything, but I will say if you are more worried about the powers that be than salvation, or in my case now gnosis, then I think there's more spiritual growth to be had. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's true. Like politics nowadays is largely fake and G-Slayer. So I guess like, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to go down the path of like, I don't know, some kind of like strange amalgamation of like a reaction, bug, clear pill. Like, oh, just let them do whatever, man. And then maybe one day Caesar Augustus will come along. But I don't know.
But was it also through? Was it not through Constantine that we do have the Christianity that we have today? So and you could say, well, this was divinely inspired, whatever, I don't know. But if you do have somebody like Constantine who came in and enacted Christianity through the empire instead of what it was before, unless I'm mistaken, of the Christians being persecuted, maybe more or less tolerated, maybe towards the time of Constantine, I think. But if not for the Roman Empire picking that up, and keep in mind, that was also a time where, and I'm not saying that this is the only attribution to why Christianity was chosen, but this was a point that was brought up before about when you have something like Mithraism, which was heavily practiced, and a lot of the legionnaires, a lot of the Roman soldiers were very much interested in that, from what I understand, then they did not want to have the Iranians influencing their own people religious-wise, so that may have been one reason why Christianity was adopted. I don't know.
I want to point something out, too. You guys were talking about Islam earlier being being influenced by Christianity itself. Someone was talking about that. There's actually a story in the chapter called El Kahf, the cave, where it talks about 7 sleepers going to sleep for 300 years and waking up under a Muslim emperor, right? And it was such a glorious miracle. Well, it turns out that this story is actually a Byzantine legend, and there were 7 Christian sleepers. This is in the 400s, I think it was, 400s AD when this was written. And there's hundreds of manuscripts in all different languages scattered out throughout the Roman Empire of this story of 7 Christians going to sleep under pagan rule and waking up under King Theodosius, who was a devout Christian. And it's the exact same story, except they just replaced a couple words.
I gotta get Murad's. Hold on.
In the Quran.
I gotta get Murad.
You're up next, bro.
Yeah, the point of it being in the Quran was because it was such a well-known story. So if you go into Surah Al-Kahf and then the Tafsir about it, which is like the exegesis, the fact of the story was because like the religious legends of the time are being used to test the Prophet ﷺ, and so they mentioned the cave story, right, where they went to sleep under pagan rule and then woke up under Christian rule or monotheistic rule, because we wouldn't necessarily say that all the Christians at the time were like bad or anything like that, or that Christianity is not preferable to outright paganism. So it's the fact that it's known in the Roman Empire was kind of the point, right? That's one of the reasons why I think it was why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in the Quran. I mean, it's not a big deal to me that it was known in the empire. You can go to that cave in Turkey, or at least one of the supposed locations, and they pretty much celebrate that fact, right? So
yeah, there is a degree to which, in Christianity, like there are Christians, especially like pacifist Christians, who will say like, oh, everything Constantine, right? But as a Christian, I think that it's one of those things where you can kind of try to drive yourself crazy counterfactual. At the end of the day, like that is the history of Christianity, and I think you have to own it. And I think you have to, I think maybe that was perhaps God's plan for the church for a time. I think that age is certainly coming to its end, and we're seeing kind of the final vestiges of it disappear now. But I don't think you can just so casually or like write it off and just be like, oh, that was all a mistake. Like, it is something you have to own as a Christian.
So I had a question for some of the Christians here, if that's okay. For not rebelling and stuff, how do you guys interpret Luke 19:27, which is but those mine enemies, bring them hither? I don't want to necessarily say the whole verse out loud.
Is that in the sheep goats passage?
I don't know if it's in the sheep's goats passage, but it's Luke 19:27, and when he had thus spoken, is 28. It goes, he went before ascending to Jerusalem. I was just wondering if you guys kind of, especially for Gnostic, how you would maybe look at that passage, given the perhaps the more ascetic thought towards politics.
Which passage were you talking about? I was looking at something.
19:27.
Okay, I found it. Yeah, so this is the parable of talents. Story is, for anyone who doesn't know it, wealthy nobleman goes away on a journey, leaves 3 different amounts of money with 3 different servants, and asks them to try to make money for him. They invested it. 2 of them invested in various ways, make the rates of return. One of them buries it in the ground. I think, is that correct? Yeah.
I got a good interpretation for this. It's saying like this: somebody who is giving all they have, right? But it's only a little bit. But it's all they have. It's 100%. Like, I have $15 to my name, right? And I give it all to the church or whatever. And someone has $1,000, but they give 500, right? That's half what they have or something. The person who gave the $15 actually gave more because they gave all of what they have. They're now broke. The other person still has $500. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, what I would also say is this occurs within a parable. So when he's talking about bring my enemies here, isn't Jesus of Nazareth the historic person bring the execution of the enemies of Jesus of Nazareth, during his lifetime? This is an image of final judgment.
Yeah, exactly. It actually comes down to being faith in the end. That's like the skeleton of all these parables all have to do with faith. And
sure.
Wait, sorry to interrupt.
Is there a passed down tradition?
Wait, real quick. Sorry to interrupt. I want to see if Quay, if there is anywhere where you can go or choose a better mobile signal, because I do notice that sometimes your signal goes off and it gets a little bit glitchy. If not, no worries. But I just wanted to make sure.
Oh no, I'm in.
See, there we go. I can't hear what you're saying. I don't know if there's any way to change the signal right now. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And everybody subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. This is currently being live streamed on BreakTheRules.tv, as well as DLive, as well as Odyssey, as well as Twitch, Facebook even, everywhere. And you can all see the links to the various places. They are rotating link pastes that go on in the chat. Also follow our Discord. All the people who are here who are not on our Discord, get into the BTR Discord. I'm going to provide the link in the chat as well. Anyway, I'm going to try one more time. Quay, let me know what the specific situation of your mobile signal is, and then we're going to get back into the discussion.
Well, Roland had a point.
Well,
I was just saying I'm on my Wi-Fi map, so this is probably as good as it's going to get.
All right, no problem there. All right, so yes, Gio, go for it.
No, Roland.
Yes.
Also, we're gonna wrap up soon, I guess.
Yes.
I'm famished, man. I'm having visions right now in my hunger. So
we should announce what's coming up, right?
That's right. Yes. So, do we have the confirmation of that specific date, though? The one that I just sent you right now. So that is okay. Excellent.
That is confirmed.
Okay. So Tuesday, January 6th, 8 o'clock. Geo
and Gnostic Informant. And not only that, but Gnostic Informant.
I didn't consent
do you
to
wanna
anything.
do you want to announce the special
I
guest? Gnostic Informant. Do you want to announce the special guest that we're gonna have in the tag team?
Yes, some of you might know him. He's well known in the Gnostic arena for sure. Miguel Connor, the host.
Wait, you cut off there. Wait, you cut off there. But Miguel
Sure.
Connor, the
Miguel Connor
yeah.
of Ion Gnostic Bite Radio. He's well known. He's been around for a long time. He was best friends with DM Murdoch, who is the source for the movie Zeitgeist, basically, which has been debunked, by the way. But anyway,
Oh God.
no, it's been debunked. I'm saying it's been debunked. That movie's been debunked. But he was in that circle for a while. Now he's a Gnostic, but he's been around for a long time, and he's a good dude. And he actually watched our stream and really liked it and thought this would be a good idea. So that'll be my partner for Gnosticism. And
Gio, as far as your partner goes, you know the deal. We are looking for somebody that'll bring in the numbers. This is something where I gotta stress, like I love listening to
Classic
everybody.
Theist.
Is Classic Theist gonna bring in the numbers? Is he gonna bring in the numbers?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, there we go. Classic.
I'd love to talk to you at some point, Gnostic, just about kind of Christianity. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
So they got good. If you're
Yeah,
breaking
Quay
up.
could come on too.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I talked just like the points on which you diverge about Christianity. And sorry about the Nagamati.
Oh yeah, for
sure. Well,
Oh,
with that spicy take, we are going to be concluding this after-hour stream. Wish me luck in the editing bay. You know why, Gio? Anyway,
I hope. Do you think that could fuck us up on Twitter?
I don't.
Like,
I don't think on Twitter, but
Because I heard a stream is being reported, but I think they specifically wanted to go after like Nick Fuentes or whoever. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think fine. I mean, this stream is already over, so there's no reporting to be had since this is already coming to a close over here. Oh, by the way, speaking of Twitter Spaces streams being reported, we are gonna have next Tuesday Tommy Sotomayor coming on Break the Rules. So
that's gonna be amazing.
get ready for that, everybody. And once again, don't forget to subscribe. Keep subscribing.
They're calling their buttholes pussies.
Gio.
Sorry.
That does remind me. And by the way, we are almost at 8,000. So we are at 7,985 subscribers on YouTube. The link is breaktherules.tv. You go there, you're on YouTube, click the subscribe button, click the bell. For those who don't know, this stream was live streamed, or still is technically. Gio, I can hear you typing. It's you gotta mute yourself when you type. So this stream is being broadcast right now on YouTube, on DLive, on Facebook, if you can believe that, on Twitch, on Odyssey, multi-channel. We want to be everywhere. We want to get our voices everywhere. So what you need to do, all the people who are listening to this right now, share the heaven out of this. Share the heaven out of the YouTube link. Share the heaven out of the Jonathan Peugeot Styx conversation, which was a brilliant conversation. I'm really happy that this was put on. And in general, support BTR through patreon.com/breaktherules. We got a new patron today. You get a lot of great bonuses for the $10 patrons. $5 patrons. Yeah, I wish it was $10. For the $5 patrons, you are going to get Patreon-only streams, including the notorious Gio versus Gio's very own father debating about Israel, which hopefully we're going to have very soon, and other streams as well. You are also going to get early access to the MP3 episodes after the initial stream comes out, before they're released to the public through iTunes and all that good stuff, Spotify, and we are on iTunes, we are on Spotify, all of those things. So anyway, patreon.com/breaktherules gives you that. For $20, you are going to get very beautiful magnets, which you have seen before on the stream. You know them, you love them. $30 gives you the beautiful prints from Giovanni Pennacchietti. Mwah, bella, buongiorno, delicioso.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
stream pulled for races.
Molto bene, cheesioso. Wait, no, it goes like this. Mamma mia, cheesioso. buono, molto bene, delicioso.
I've had
How did it
enough.
taste?
I've
How
had
did it
enough.
taste? Oh ho 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 ho! Now Pringles are pizzalicious. That was from a Pringles commercial from the 1998 or something like that.
I seem to recall. I remember when they came out with pizza Pringles. I remember that.
Yes. So anyway, we are ending this.
I'm mortified.
We are ending this thing right now. Please subscribe, breaktherules.tv, all the other platforms. Take care. Mwah. Good night, everybody. Well.